guys, it's Caroline, and I'm super excited for today's video because as you can see, I have a special guest with me. Her name is Sarah. You'll be hearing a lot more from her in just a few minutes. But before I hand over to Sarah and introduce her, I just wanted to share the reasoning behind this video. So in an attempt to pull back the curtain and hopefully really give you a better sense and deeper dive into what the actual coaching process looks like and the results that you can get. I thought what better way than to actually let you hear it directly from the source herself, Sarah. I'd like to hand over to you, Sarah. What's going on for you right now in your career and life?
Thank you so much, Karen. I just want to say I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with other folks in your network or people who might be listening today. I have to say, having come out the other end of your coaching journey, there's something really profound about having the opportunity to connect with like-minded people in a kind of in a network sense. So I'm really excited to be here and have that conversation. So yeah, just to share a little bit about myself and where I'm at. At the moment, we're obviously still in the middle of a very unusual time in the world and everything that's been going on with COVID. But in terms of my career and how I think the last 6 months have gone, it's been really quite an extraordinary transformation in terms of where I was when I started speaking with you, and then sort of since we've had our journey together. I've been promoted in the organization that I work at. I work in a leadership development organization. I also have completed a economics and business course with an elite institution as well, which has been amazing. That's added another kind of dimension to my skill set. I find myself now, I've completely shifted the mindset that I use to approach my work. And I've launched a number of kind of organization first projects within my role. And I think also too, there's been this really amazing sense of momentum that I've really gained, I guess, in my life more broadly from starting to really live the person that I want to be in a more fuller way. And I think our coaching was really felt like a very powerful roadmap for me to start to kind of build this foundational basis of this person that I want to become. And so I'm sort of putting all of those pieces into place at the moment as we speak. So that's kind of me at the moment.
That's amazing, and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank
That's
you.
so amazing.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
hearing
so
some of this for the first time too, so I get to celebrate.
No, yeah.
So that's so great that, as you said, you're kind of, I mean, it's always the journey, right? Our journey is never complete, but like you said, you kind of come through the dark times. So if you'll indulge me and the people that are watching this, if you don't mind going back to those dark times for a minute and just sharing, prior to us connecting, what was going on in your career or what was not going on in your career at the time, and take us through kind of where you were at that point and why you were thinking about seeking out coaching to help you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's interesting what you said just there in that question where you said what was not going on. And I think what's really interesting, certainly for me, is that, prior to us coming together and having the coaching, things were fine. And there was a certain sense of fineness. And I think fineness can take on a certain vanilla quality to it. Day in, day out, I knew my job well. I was fairly successful. But I think I had a sense of a much deeper sense of potentiality of who I could be, what I could offer, what I could kind of bring, not just to my role, but also I think at a deeper sense in terms of the mission that I felt like I was here for in my life. And I didn't feel particularly connected to that mission. And I think initially kind of when I started to think about that, I tend to be very, a real sort of self-starter. So naturally I was reading a lot of books and kind of tactical how-to guides and, 5 steps to A, B, and C. And I just found that a lot of that really missed this kind of deeper sense of, kind of self-reflection or self-connection. And I think when I was thinking about coaching, I sort of came at that with some skepticism. I'd spoken with a lot of different coaches prior to speaking with you, actually, and I found a lot of them took a very sort of tactically oriented approach. So like, oh, well, do up your resume. Here's 5 steps to, go and speak with these 5 people and you'll be fine. But I think my sense of self wasn't really aligned with getting what I wanted. So I would go and do those things, but I would be coming from a place of less self-confidence than I needed in order to become the right person to get those right opportunities. And so I think when we connected, I just immediately had a sense that you were asking me a lot more deeper questions, questions about my mindset, questions about not just what job I wanted to get, but what deeper purpose was I wanting to connect with in my life. And I think those were the sort of questions that I was wanting to have someone guide me towards. And I think ultimately that's why I kind of found our work together much more compelling than some of the other work that I'd done in the past with, kind of other coaches, I guess. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thanks for sharing. You were dropping so much knowledge in that. Let me try to unpack some of the beautiful things that I heard.
Sure.
So one thing I think that's particularly resonant with me because A, I hear it a lot from clients, and B, this was close to my own experience, is that sense of fine. And I remember you describing it actually as your career being in drift mode. And just kind of like it's fine, good on paper, paycheck, healthcare, good people, check. And yet I love this sense of deeper potentiality. I think that's what you said. And the last piece that I felt was so important is this idea that I do think a lot of people focus on the externals. And I think the thing that I always think about is people know how to do these things. And I think we know how to do them, and we know that we have the tools out there, and yet we still don't do them. And I think that's the real work, right? And that's the real power, I think, behind a coach, because we can actually go into those deeper things. Because once you have the confidence, once you have the clarity of where you want to go and the belief that you can achieve it and that it's okay to want, the steps figure themselves out.
Yeah. If I may just comment on that, I think one of the interesting things that you touch on there, which I love, is the thinking a lot around one's sense of self-identity, and so I think for most of the people I think that you work with, generally, for me as a person, I'm very highly self-motivated. So it's not the question of how do I technically do this thing? How do I technically execute on that X, Y, and Z? That's not difficult. What's difficult is having a sense of self that aligns with taking those action sets. So for me, the question is a lot about what is the story that I tell myself about who I am? So who am I to go do those things? Or is it me that is that person who's standing out front? In my case, wanting to do a lot more leadership, wanting to do a lot more teaching, wanting to do a lot more, connecting with clients in a very different way. And so when I have a sense of self-identity that aligns with those actions, it's not hard. And I think that that's something that is really powerful. And so I agree with you a lot on that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It made me think of two things. Number one, I want to get into and kind of share with people and have you talk about kind of like what actually you implemented to create some of these shifts. But what just popped into my head as you were saying that is I remember talking about one of the ideas that you had, that to get all these things, it has to be a lot of hard work. And when I heard you just talking in terms of shifting those relationships, and kind of what I heard was engaging with the same activities in a different way. And again, tell me if I'm handing you words, because you didn't just say that. I kind of know it from our work together. But I think, really getting underneath what are those stories and messages that are, you didn't have any trouble moving forward, but I think there's a difference between grinding through something, right? Because you're a doer, because you're a high achiever, because you're going to figure out a way to get it done regardless, versus hopefully some of the shifts in re-engaging in a way that actually feels good and energizing, and I get to look forward to this, as opposed to just kind of muscling your way through it. So any thoughts on what I just said there?
Many thoughts. Many thoughts on that. Yeah, definitely. And so I guess I would probably say something like this. I think for me, some of the biggest shifts that happened, you were asking about kind of concrete changes. So I'd love to kind of give some examples of that. So for me, in general, I tend to be someone who tends to be kind of maybe out ahead in terms of how I think about things or kind of coming up with ideas or, I think my current supervisor says, I see around corners. And so I tend to be someone who kind of is a few steps ahead in terms of seeing what's possible. And so because of that, I tend to be someone who's really a self-starter. So I'm like, oh, this is an issue, we need to fix it, let's go and do it, and I'll just go do it. And what I've found through our kind of mindset shift work is rather than being that person who, as you say, is kind of grinding out there on your own, kind of figuring out all of this stuff and kind of waiting for the rest of the team or the group to kind of catch up, is I really started to shift my sense of myself as kind of really part of rather than sort of leading out in front or being kind of separate out in front. And so for me, I kind of conceptualize that as being part of a circle with my organization or my team members as kind of part of that circular group. And when I think of that and when I adopt that mindset, such as I do now in my workplace, concretely what that means is that I've actually shifted my whole approach to how I communicate about projects that I'm doing. I communicate a lot more, I seek a lot more consultation, I have a lot more buy-in from other stakeholders. A lot more people are coming along much better. The projects have far more momentum. Again, this, seems in retrospect obvious, but to me at the time was not obvious in terms of how my own behavior and my own sense of kind of how to lead was actually impacting the results that I was getting. So I found very different changes just by shifting that mindset.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's such a powerful, I feel like my whole body relaxed actually when you said that and you talked about, and I hear that all of the time. I am the same way. And we can train ourselves to do exactly what you're doing. But just to tap, there's so much power in tapping into that collective. And having it be less energy output for you, like you said, more buy-in from people, closer connections, and it just really expands in so many beautiful ways the opportunities that present themselves. And it's a heck of a lot easier than being that person that's out in charge. And I think so many of us ambitious, high-achieving people kind of, or I don't know if it's probably partly nature, partly nurture, but we're just so used to that out in front, like, follow me. And I don't think we realize how draining it is, number one, and how even if it feels good at the time, I think over time it becomes really draining. And, it does kind of limit us in ways because we're not tapping into that collective or whatever. So I love that shift. It's level 6, by the way, just because you know what that means. But just for other people, it's a very high vibration, high consciousness way of leading. And gosh, I'm just thinking of your coworkers and how lucky they are to have someone like you kind of leading from that, because you don't see it a lot in the workplace. So anything else that you want to, because we only have a certain amount of time, so we can't share everything, obviously, but any other kind of brass tacks, like things that you implemented from our work together that you really, so one of the things you mentioned was kind of just interacting in a different way, leading with a different approach. What else did you do that really started shifting things for you?
It's probably a couple of things that come to mind, and maybe I'll speak more at a tactical level, because again, this can help people like ground it, ground their experience. But I think a couple of things. One was really interesting to me, together through the program that you deliver, you have a lot of, guides and tools and frameworks, and, you have me write out a lot of things and write a lot of vision statements and all these different kind of ways of getting at or getting under some of the things that I want. And so a lot of that work that we produced together in the time that we did, I've now taken a lot of that and built upon that and deepened that. So a lot of the frameworks and things that we did, one example of that is you kind of had me write out like a perfect day or like a story of a perfect day. And I now use that regularly as a meditation, and I kind of go into that very, very deeply, almost on a weekly basis. And I'm very kind of committed to continually seeing this and really viscerally experiencing the story of what I want. For me, I'm very kind of, I guess, story focused. That really helps me to visualize very deeply, like, oh, this is what it would be like to get those things that I want. It kind of helps for me to counteract the kind of negativity bias where you can spend a lot of your energy focusing on what you don't want or what you don't have, as opposed to kind of channeling that energy really into where you want to be. So that's like one concrete example. Another thing that was also a really huge shift for me was noticing how I have all of these really excellent kind of, project management skills and kind of certain types of leadership skills that I employ within my work domain, and noticing that I didn't actually really apply those within my own life. So things like managing my time in a way that was really kind of best for me, or really kind of prioritizing things that have high impact. I wasn't really doing that in my own life. And so through some of the kind of goal setting and the way that we talked about that, I started transferring all of those work skills into my own life. And so I've kind of radically changed the way my calendar looks. My diary is completely different. I'm kind of, at the moment, I think I'm probably the fittest I've ever been. I'm doing most of my days high impact projects, very small percentages, kind of that menial grind work that, so many of us get caught up in. And so there's just been this real transformation of kind of how my day flows, and I get so much more done, and there's so much less kind of distraction and noise, and so there's really been an acceleration effect, I think, in kind of implementing a lot of these tools over the long term for me.
That's
some examples.
Again, you dropped like 10 nuggets. But of the ones, hopefully, that I can recall, so one thing actually Sarah is mirroring for you all super, super well is this idea of habitizing things. So I talk a lot about this, and we work on it at a variety of different levels. But, just really shifting this stuff into the way that you approach everything. So thank you for sharing that example. And actually, I'm very gratified that's still working for you. It's kind of added benefit because of course, I tell people, it's not just the time we spend together, but this is stuff that actually will put you on a different trajectory for the rest of your life. But I think it's one thing to come from me and another thing to actually hear your example, and that it actually sounds like that's what's being proven out.
Yeah. And if I may just add one other thing, I'm just trying to, again, I'm thinking about folks who might be listening to our conversation and what might be of value to them. I just think one other piece that I think I found extremely valuable is also to really prioritize, and we talk a lot about that in our time together, to really prioritize developing deeper relationships with people that form a part of my career kind of master mindset, or what do you call them, mastermind group, and it's interesting because to me, I've traditionally hated networking. I just can't stand that kind of superficial chit chat connection. And so as part of our program and our time together, I really developed this kind of plan for myself where I engage with a lot of what I would call kind of thought partner conversations. So I have a lot of conversations now with people in my industry, people in my network, not necessarily with the idea of having some sort of transactional connection, but it's really about developing deeper relationships with people professionally, so that we can all kind of be of benefit to each other and lift each other up. And that was kind of one of the biggest things also that I took from the course that we did together, or the program, because that was a real shift for me, and I feel much more supported professionally now than I think I did previously. So I just also want to add that as well.
Yes, yeah. I love that so much, and I love that it's transformed your relationships in that way. That's amazing. So I wanted to thank you for, actually, it's a great segue. We're talking about networking. You have graciously agreed to those that want to reach out to you to actually connect with you. And as we've just talked about, one of the best things that you can possibly do to get the career and life you want is to actually reach out to the people that are doing it. And even better, the people who are further on the path, not so far that you can't even relate, but just a little bit further on the path that they can kind of pull you over to the other side of things, as you said. So Sarah, what's the best way if people want to reach out to you and connect with you directly? How can they do that?
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. I would certainly really encourage anyone who's listening to the video who's thinking about maybe making a career shift. I work in the area of engagement and leadership development with a focus on emotional intelligence. If those are domains that you're interested in and you really want to kind of move ahead in that direction, then of course I would love to talk with any of your clients or potential clients. LinkedIn is probably the best way for me, and I'm sure you can perhaps put that link at the end of our conversation or something like that. But it would just be my pleasure to chat with anyone or support anyone in any way on their journey here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. It's so generous, and I guarantee anyone who comes into, I was so excited to do this conversation today just because I love being in your energy. So I encourage people to actually reach out and start the conversation. You never know where it might lead. So yes, I will drop the link in to folks. And if you are interested in seeing more content like this, whether it's discussions with people like Sarah, whether it is specifics on some of the topics we talked about, networking, mindset, how to get that clarity and how to move forward, the best way to do that is to actually subscribe to my mailing list. You will get weekly-ish, I will only commit to ish, weekly posts and videos and blogs. And you'll also get, actually as a free offer, you'll get a high-level guide that talks about the program that Sarah and I have been talking about. So it'll give you even, kind of the next layer down of the structure that we actually follow. So thank you so much for tuning in. I would love to hear your comments and questions. I would love if you reach out to Sarah. I'd love if you reach out to me. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.